Hallelujah.
Okay. So here read your Torah portion this week.
Yay.
Oh, good, because we're only going to go over it briefly. So, today, this was Vayishlach, Genesis 32:4 through 36:43. So our brief outline. Jacob returns back after a 20 years stay in Haran, and he sends angel emissaries to Esau in hopes of reconciliation. But his messengers report that his brother is angry and has 400 armed men.
Oh, dear.
So Jacob prepares for war and sends Esau a large gift, consisting of hundreds of heads of sheep and cattle to appease him. That night, Jacob ferries his family and possessions across the Yabok River. He remains behind and encourages the angel that embodies the spirit of, encounters the angel of the spirit of Esau, with whom he wrestled until daybreak. Now, of course, which angel he wrestles with, I've heard a dozen different interpretations of that. Whether it was actually himself, whether it was Yeshua, whether it was, as said in the commentary that he found here, that it was Esau's angel. I've read all three. But he wrestles with it until daybreak.
Right. Whatever.
As was mentioned last week, now Jacob is an old guy here. As we mentioned last week, when he was in his 80s, he lifted that stone off the well that took a whole team of shepherds to lift. And now he wrestled with an angel all night long. And the angel could not break free, could not get away. The only way that he could is he touched Jacob on the hip and dislocated it. But then the angel gives him the name Yisrael, meaning, depending on your interpretation, prevails over or struggles with God. Could be prevails over a divine being, could be struggles with God. They all have the same word. And Jacob finally meets Esau, who was less angry than otherwise thought. Esau greets him, and they hug and they kiss, and they part ways. So it seems that after all that time, Esau mellowed out. Plus, it probably didn't hurt that Jacob gave him a small fortune in presents. So maybe he wasn't quite as angry. My guess has always been, because remember when Jacob first stole the blessing, Esau threatened to kill him. He said, "I'm going to kill him." But two things. First of all, Isaac was still alive at this point. And Esau's not going to kill his brother while their father's alive. Also, it's been 20 years.
Right.
I think some of that anger is simmered down quite a lot.
Just a tad.
Well, Esau was no pauper either at this point.
Oh no, he was rich himself.
You know, he said, "Look, I don't need anything from you." You know?
Yeah, he was rich himself. But you know, after 20 years, he remembered, I was really angry at you 20 years ago. Why was that again? I really should be angry at you, but I forgot why I'm so angry at you.
It's not worth it.
Yeah.
Both of them are old now anyways.
Yeah.
Throw their canes at each other, you know.
Well, it ticked him off because, you know, he thought he'd been taking the blessing, you know, so what am I left with, you know?
Yeah.
So,
And
but
he found out those 20
he
years.
said, well, you know, even without a blessing, I'm doing pretty good, so.
Yeah, he found those 20 years, he's still doing pretty good for himself.
Right, so, you know, you can have your blessing.
So Jacob buys some land near Shechem, whose crown prince, also named Shechem, abducts and rapes Jacob's daughter, Dinah.
Only the daughter.
Depending on your interpretation, it says that Dinah takes after her mother, Leah, because one of the words to describe Leah means the one who wanders. And she went out on her own into the town. Yeah, she went out on her own into the town. The prince saw her, liked her.
That's better than cow. How's that spelled?
What?
Leah.
L-E-A-H.
Well, I don't know. Well, they
It's
take that one.
Leia, not Leah. Different name.
That's better than me.
Now, the prince, of course, actually loves her even after that. He didn't go about it the right way. But then he said, the prince said, I want to make this right. And he talks to two of her brothers, Shimon and Lavi.
As if you could make that right.
No. Well, the Torah does talk about that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But that's something else. But he talks to two of her brothers who say, if you and the whole city get circumcised, we'll let you marry into the family. And Shechem was so smitten still that he agreed. And while the entire town was recovering, Shimon and Levi killed them all.
Mm-hmm.
Jacob was not happy because they kind of learned from Dad and that they did this by trickery. Of course, Jacob, known for doing things by trickery. He also said, well, now it's going to be known that you tricked and killed this whole city, and every city nearby is going to be out to get me, so we can't stay here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to move. Rachel dies during childbirth of Benjamin, and if you remember, Rachel wanted to name him, she wanted to name him son of my sorrows. And Jacob said,
That's an awful name.
yeah, Jacob said it's a terrible name. He's going to name him Benjamin, son of my right hand.
Mm-hmm.
Reuben interferes with his father's marital life. Exactly how he interferes is open to interpretation. I've seen some that said that he slept with one of the handmaids. I've seen some that say that he moved the tents, or that he put his father's bed into Leah's tent. Either way, he was meddling in parental matters that he shouldn't have been meddling in.
I'm way in now.
So he lost the birthright. Jacob gets to Hebron, and Isaac finally dies at the age of 180. And then it ends by listing out Esau's family. So that was the Parsha. But what I want to talk about more, because it's coming up, is something that I got from my father, information on Hanukkah.
Oh, fun.
Because that's coming up in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Well, less than 2 weeks. A week and a couple days. Okay, so first of all, who knows why Hanukkah is 8 days?
Because of the lamp oil.
Because of the oil?
I'm gonna
For
let
8
y'all answer.
days. That's the story.
That's the 8 weeks.
That story came later.
Oh,
Something else, but I
Okay.
forgot.
I don't.
The whole light that was supposed to burn for 1 day that lasted 8 days, that story came centuries later.
Myth.
Oh,
Yeah, that's Midrash.
I know it's a myth.
oh, okay.
That's the story.
That's the story I've heard.
And that's not the true miracle of Hanukkah either. The true miracle of Hanukkah was that, if you remember, the Syrian Greeks had basically Hellenized the country. Most of the country of Israel had followed the Greek way.
Yeah.
And this was also an issue. It normally wouldn't have been an issue, but Israel was never conquered by Alexander the Great. When Alexander the Great came through,
I remember.
the priests of the temple came out to meet him and showed him the book of Daniel. And they said, our God says you're going to destroy Persia, the strongest empire in the world.
Mm.
And he's like, some God I don't even know about just said I'm going to destroy the best empire in the world. And he was so happy he just marched right on through and didn't fight there. He did the same in Egypt, by the way. He went to Egypt and someone came out and said, well, our God said that you're the son of Zeus. Even though the Egyptians didn't know Zeus, they just know that Zeus was important to the Greeks.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, well, if I'm the son of Zeus and you guys think that, that's great. So they declared him Pharaoh.
So they basically copied what
Yeah,
the priest did.
yeah,
Word that out.
probably. But that's
Well,
the...
Daniel's true, but I'm saying the Egyptians
There were a couple different stories about that. Like, I think it was somewhere in Turkey that Gordius. You ever heard about the story of the Gordian knot? They said, they told him, you can be our king, but you have to untie this knot, and it's this giant tangled mess. Said, it's a rule in our country that only someone who can untie this thing can become king. So he just took his sword and cut it apart and said, okay, I untied it. And so there were some places that he conquered without actually fighting there. And of course, as the prophecy went on, he destroyed Persia, he defeated Persia, and he died soon after. And because he didn't have any children, his 4 generals took control of the lands. And one of the generals was took control over the Seleucid area, the Syria area. And they came and Hellenized Israel because Israel thought, oh, these Greeks are so cool, let's be like them. Just like, unfortunately, like our people and like we do, is they see how neat and how cool the world is, and they say, we want to be just like them. So they started following their practices and following their gods and said, come into our country and take control of this stuff and tell us how to do things this way.
The Hasmoneans didn't agree with it.
No, the Hasmoneans are the priests, and they said,
Ain't no way.
they said, no, this is bad. So they took Matthias, who was the high priest at the time, took himself and then anyone who would join him. They went up to the hills and they started guerrilla warfare against the Syrians. The miracle of Hanukkah was that this small group of maybe a couple hundred people.
It wasn't even armed.
Yeah, they didn't have real weapons. They had like farm tools. Defeated the Syrian army. Like
Well,
the big.
as we
Greek
talked
Syrian army.
about, elephants are no match in the mountains.
Yeah, they sent the elephants up the mountains after them.
And that was it.
Yeah,
So
elephants
they-
aren't good in the mountains.
So they said, leave them alone. They're too much trouble. you
Pretty
know.
much. Also, it was, if you read some historic stuff from that time period, Antiochus, who was the king of Syria, he was widely regarded to be pretty cuckoo. He declared himself a god, which was even a big no-no back then. But everyone didn't say that's sacrilegious. Everyone said, this guy's crazy. Let's just keep a wide berth and not mess with him.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that happened, and of course the Syrians were driven out, and at that point Judah was leading, Matthias' son. He gained the nickname Maccabee, the hammer.
Mm-hmm.
And when they recovered the temple, they found that the Greeks had sacrificed pigs there and set up their idols there and their altars there.
The whole thing was desecrated.
The whole thing
Yeah.
was a mess.
So they couldn't, they were trying to clean up shop.
Yeah, so they had to go through, they had to purify everything. And they wanted to be done in time for Sukkot because Sukkot was when the temple was always dedicated. The tabernacle was dedicated on Sukkot. Solomon's temple was dedicated on Sukkot.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to have it ready. And it took too long. They didn't finish until Kislev 25th.
Mm-hmm.
Hanukkah. They said, well, we don't want to wait 10 months to actually celebrate Sukkot. We're going to celebrate Sukkot now a couple months late.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Hanukkah's 8 days. Because Sukkot's 8 days.
Right.
Well, it happened in other ways, at other times, with other holidays.
Yeah.
Like the Passovers, they couldn't celebrate at certain times, so they said, okay, just as long as we do it, it's more important we do it. It's
Yeah,
less
that
than-
was mentioned in the Torah, I think, that there was a
Yes.
large group of people who was unclean
Right,
for Passover, and Moses asked God, and God said,
yeah,
they can do it next month.
that's right, yeah.
So they wanted to celebrate Sukkot, and as soon as the temple was ready, they celebrated Sukkot. The story of the light lasting 8 days was added later on. It's a good story, but it's just a story.
But they did need special oil, didn't they?
They did need special
Didn't that
oil.
come from, I think, Tekoa?
The Torah lists somewhere in Leviticus, I think, all the ingredients you need for the oil.
Yeah, and the
So
nearest
they have
place
to know.
wasn't several days away where they could get it from, you know, or whatever.
Yeah,
But they had to have the special oil, right?
Yeah, but that was part of the whole cleaning up
But that
process.
took, you know, that took time too, to get all that stuff together.
Yeah, that was part of the whole cleaning up process. Oh, that reminds me, because I
So
just.
can I ask
Yes.
how in the
Go
world
ask.
that other story derived out of the
Midrash.
Maccabees? I mean, how, what?
Midrash,
How's that even tied to that? at
children's
all?
stories. Some kid asked their dad, "Why is Hanukkah 8 days?" And their
The dad didn't know and just made it up?
made a story, or made up a story because maybe the kid
Tried to
didn't
be more
understand.
elaborate.
Maybe the children didn't understand the meaning behind why Sukkot was linked to rededication of the temple. But it was just a story. Which, by the way, Hanukkah means dedication.
Yeah.
Chanuk means dedication. And the word Chanuk, I believe, is only in the Bible in one place.
John,
No,
Nope.
it's in
One
the,
of the,
Go back.
it's in the old ones.
It's in Proverbs.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. The word Chanuk says, when in Proverbs it says, train up a child the way that he should go, and when he is old he will not depart from it. The word for train up is Chanuk.
Dedicated.
Dedicate a child in the way that he should go.
Hello.
And when he's old he won't change. I don't remember the chapter,
Oh.
but it's that verse that talks about that.
Proverbs.
Yeah.
Also, by the way, speaking of recent things, in Israel this week they found a stone, some really small stone.
I've seen that.
It was a Becca stone.
From the first time.
It's the weight, Becca is the weight of the half shekel temple tax. That whenever you come to the temple, you're supposed to pay the half shekel. They found a stone weight, accurate stone weight, that weighed half a shekel. And it had the Hebrew for Becca on it. And it was actually written backwards. So archaeologists think that this was a stone that after they used it to weight, they used it to stamp either a seal or stamp with ink on a parchment. Because when you stamps have to be backwards.
Yeah.
They think it was a stone that they weighed it and they stamped with it either on a seal or a parchment to prove that this person paid the tax. They have found other stones, not Becca stones, but other stones that had backwards Hebrew on them that they knew were for stamping wax seals.
So it was written right to left and not right.
Well, the letters were mirror imaged also.
Yeah, it's on, somebody posted it on Facebook.
Mhm. Okay, but I also want to bring this up. This is what my dad sent me. It's called Creating a Passion for God and Torah. We tell stories, they're an important part of our faith. They're a way of teaching. They're an essential in the way that we learn. Like Passover, Hanukkah is a time to recall the historical miracles of our faith. It's a time that we set aside to recall the past and relate to our future. Each night affords us the time to delve into our rich history and discuss the historical, prophetic, practical, and inspiring nature of this celebration of our people and of our faithful God. In Yeshua, the Hanukkah story is our story. So, this whole article was written possibly for someone there, because everyone in this room knows, just because it's in the winter, Hanukkah is not Christmas. Hanukkah came first.
Amen.
Hanukkah came first by quite a long time.
Thank
Well,
you.
By at least a century or two. Well, more than that, because Christmas didn't become Christmas until
Centuries.
several centuries after that. But no, Hanukkah is not Christmas. It celebrates a victory that happened in the past, one that will happen in the future, and one that's happening now. It's a story of light growing in the darkness. Wherever there are Jewish people, there is also darkness trying to snuff them out. History proves this over and over. But the miracle of Hanukkah is that the light is not diminished. Instead, the light grows. The story of Hanukkah is a story of a war between two worldviews, Hellenism and Torah. Hellenism is the language of humanism, philosophical theology, and relativism. It's the world. Torah is the language of theism, mitzvot, deeds, and revelation. God. Same battle is going on today. As far as the body of Messiah goes, the Hanukkah revolution has just begun. The return to our Jewish roots is not a fad. It's not an American or an Israeli phenomenon. It's international, spreading everywhere to every people, and unstoppable because it is biblical. It's sweeping Hanukkah, rededication of the body of Messiah. In Matthew 5, Yeshua tells us to be a light.
Yes.
And he also tells us to be salt. He calls his disciples the salt of the earth.
Yes.
Amen.
Just like salt adds flavor to food, we are to add flavor to the earth.
All right.
Amen.
Just a little bit of salt can make an otherwise bitter taste palatable. We disciples are to be the force for good and righteousness that balances the bitterness and ugliness of the world and all that's evil and wrong and wicked. Salt is also used as a preservative. We are to be that which preserves and repairs the world. And if you've ever been to the Dead Sea, you know that salt in a wound, while it hurts, makes it heal faster.
Yes.
Last time I was at Dead Sea, I had a little scratch. I didn't know it until I got into the water. then I really knew it. But it was gone by the next day. Yeah, if you go to Israel, go to the Dead Sea. If there's any cuts anywhere that you don't know about,
You'll know it.
you'll know it. You will know it.
Because the salinity is far greater than even ocean water.
Oh, by a lot, yes.
The water stings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why there's
Does
the
it have
phrase.
sulfur? Because
Don't put
sometimes you
salt
get
in
that
Sulfur also.
sulfuric smell.
Yeah, it's sulfur also.
Yeah.
In the same way, Yeshua said that we're the light of the world. Just one little lamp can dispel a whole lot of darkness. Just as a lamp on a stand gives light to the whole room, we're also to be the force that dispels the darkness from the earth. In Judaism, the concept of preserving the world like salt and illuminating the darkness like light is called tikkun olam, fixing the world. As disciples of Yeshua, we are to be busy fixing, preserving, and repairing a broken and hurting world.
Absolutely.
But he also warned us not to let our lamp be concealed underneath a bowl. If we do, our light will be useless.
All
Lamp
right.
doesn't do any good. You stick it underneath a basket so you can't see it.
That's right.
He warned us not to lose our salty flavor. If we do, we'll be good for nothing but trampled underfoot. So consider this is from the Talmud, because they didn't get it. The sages asked a rabbi, when salt becomes unsalty, how can it be salty? And he said, you can make it salty with a mule's afterbirth.
Good Lord.
And they said, but mules don't have afterbirth, because mules can't have children. They're sterile. So they said, how can that happen? He said, that can happen when salt becomes unsalty. So salt will become unsalty
You use a mule's
when
afterbirth
a
to
mule
be
can give
salty.
birth. Yeah.
What about if a leopard loses the spots?
Yeah, same kind of thing. Mules don't reproduce, they're sterile. In the same way, it's impossible for salt to lose its saltiness. So it's not that it loses its saltiness, it's that you're no longer salt at all. The point is, salt can't lose its saltiness, but we can. It's our job as disciples, the salt of the earth. And it's possible, even likely, that we will lose the essence of character that makes us salty. And then how good would unsalty salt be? When we lose our saltiness, we are worthless to the kingdom, no longer good for anything. So how do we stay salty, and what is this saltiness? In the two analogies, salt and light correspond. Being the salt of the earth is equivalent to being the light of the world. So too, losing our saltiness is equivalent to hiding our light under a bowl. What is the saltiness and what is the light? The answer is in verse 16 of the same chapter, that where Yeshua said, "In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they might see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven."
Mm-hmm.
See, a lot of people have questions and they don't read the rest of it, where Yeshua just out and gives the answer sometimes.
Uh-huh.
Could it be able to be that simple? Our saltiness that we're in danger of losing and therefore being worthless to the kingdom, and our light that we're in danger of concealing and therefore being worthless to the kingdom are our good deeds. So, the disciples are the salt, and the disciples are the lamp. The saltiness is our good deeds. It's how people can tell that it's salt, they taste it.
Mm-hmm.
The light is the good deeds. They can see it. Remember, for all that people keep, a lot of people, especially like Christians, hear the word good deeds and they immediately cringe and say, well, it doesn't say that you need good deeds to be saved, and no, it doesn't say that you need good deeds to be saved.
Good deeds are the result of you being saved.
Right.
Right.
But our good deeds, showing our good deeds is not how we earn salvation. Showing our good deeds is how we are useful to God.
Mm-hmm.
You don't earn your salvation.
Right. It's not to get salvation. It's to be useful to God.
Amen.
Yeah.
Because how many people have come to the Lord just by seeing somebody do good?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
The parable of the lamp in Mark 4 demonstrates just the opposite. Unlike Matthew's use of this parable where the light of the lamp symbolizes the disciples' good deeds, in Mark, he makes the light of the lamp symbolize the teaching of the kingdom instead of the good deeds of the kingdom. Yeshua uses the lamp parable to illustrate his reasoning for teaching in parables. Just as the lamp is not meant to be hidden, neither is the teaching of the kingdom meant to be hidden. Just as a lamp is meant to be set on a stand to light up the whole room, so too the message of the kingdom is meant to be openly disclosed and taught to anyone, so that if anyone has ears to hear, let him obey.
Yep.
The emphasis is on anyone. Anyone who wants to listen can learn this and obey.
So, I'm sorry, excuse me. So the interpretation that he who has ears let him hear is incorrect? Is he who has ears let him obey? Or is that-
It's the word here
Mhm.
is Shema,
Mm-hmm.
which is an active listening, and just sitting there and having the sound come to you is not Shema.
Right. It requires an action.
Right. You don't Shema unless you've done something to prove that you heard it.
Right. Like
Okay.
people get confused. It's not like a mother says, my child doesn't listen to me. There's nothing wrong with their hearing. There's nothing. You don't have to take him to the doctor to check out his hearing.
That's
Okay.
true.
They're rebellious in attitude
Oh,
and
yeah.
disobedient in action. Okay, so that's what the word has to do with. Is
Okay.
they don't want to do it.
Right.
Like that. They hear you plainly. It's not just that. It's connected to intimately with an action.
Yeah.
Also, so
Shema requires an action to
That's
prove
why,
that it
that's
was
why
heard.
when they try to pin Yeshua down, they say, we're smart. The 613, you got laws. If he says one, we'll say, what about the others? And he pulled up the Shema.
Yeah.
That's what he said. And it's like if the cable network news were to say, the Christians believe that's the most important command, to love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul. On to the sports. That's not what it means. It means to love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul, with all your might, and there's nothing else.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like, if I'm not
Correct
mistaken,
me if you
Yeah, that's
disagree. Yeah,
if I'm
so-
not mistaken, it's like in the book of Yaakov, what they call him James. It says, "Be doers of the word and not hearers only,"
Right.
Yeah.
because that's the ultimate deception. Now, you can hear the word all day long, but if you don't do it, actually act it out in your actions, then
Yeah.
there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that you are actually. You can say you're saved all day long. You can say, "Oh, I love the Lord" and all this, but if you don't show it in your actions, then it's safe to call you a liar.
There's been no transformation in your life.
Information, but no transformation.
Right.
Yeah.
And you look at, when God approached the man during the fall, the deal was, he told me, look, if you eat of this tree, this forbidden tree, these are the consequences. Well, what's he come on with the first thing? Because you shemad your wife.
Yep.
Okay? You not only listened to her, you obeyed her. You didn't even bother asking me.
Mhm.
you know, as far as that's concerned. That's the gravity of the word. Correct me if you disagree.
No, that's true.
Okay, so again, he went over himself. He said, you know, yeah, there will be the minimum.